Your eyes flicker open to darkness. For a moment, you're unsure if you're dreaming. The silence is thick, broken only by the faint hiss of a dying fire in the grate. Then you remember you are in London, 1860. The air is heavy with coal. Smoke even inside your own house, but this house is no ordinary home. It is a palace disguised as a townhouse, one of the grand residences of Belgravia. The mattress beneath you is impossibly soft, stuffed with the finest horsehair and goose down. Above, a canopy of embroidered silk hangs low, faintly swaying as if even the air here is careful not to disturb you. The Egyptian cotton sheets that cover your body were imported from overseas, costing more than a working family might see in an entire year. They carry the faint scent of lavender, for your laundress boiled and perfumed them only yesterday. It is early, perhaps 5 a.m., but you needn't rise by your own effort. You never do. The door opens silently, as if by magic. A footman enters, with a silver candlestick, his polished shoes glinting in the half-light. Behind him, your valet moves with practiced precision. He has been at your side for 15 years, knowing the rhythm of your life better than you do yourself. "Good morning, my lord," he says softly, bowing. "A fine day awaits us. I've taken the liberty of preparing your blue waistcoat." He speaks not as a suggestion, but as a fact. Your life is choreographed down to the smallest detail. You sink deeper into the pillows, mumbling something that might be agreement, and let the servants work. The fire is stoked higher. Your clothes are laid out. Hot water steams in a porcelain basin. Privacy in this world does not exist. Someone is always there, watching, waiting, anticipating. This is the life of the richest in Victorian London, but only a few streets away, another life is beginning. A sharp voice cuts through the darkness. Up now, or there'll be no work. Your eyes snap open. You are not beneath embroidered silk. You are lying on rags in a cellar in 7 Dials, one of the most notorious slums in London. The damp stone floor seeps into your bones. The smell is overwhelming. Unwashed bodies, mildew, rotting food, and the open sewer that runs down the street outside. You are 10 years old, though hunger has left you stunted, so you look more like 7. Your bed is nothing more than a straw-filled sack, blackened with soot and crawling with lice. Beside you, 2 siblings shift in their sleep. Across the room, your mother is already awake, pulling on her worn shawl, her hands red and raw from yesterday's washing work. There is no valet to whisper you awake, no footman to bring warmth and light. There is only your mother's voice, sharp with fatigue and fear. If you don't rise, you won't eat. Your job is chimney sweeping. It is brutal, filthy, and often deadly, but it is the only reason you are not yet in the grave. Back in Belgravia, the morning continues with ceremony. Your valet guides you into a linen shirt, the fabric crisp and freshly pressed. Wool trousers follow, then a waistcoat of deep blue trimmed with silver buttons. Around your neck, a silk cravat is tied with a flourish, each fold perfect. Finally, polished leather boots worth more than a labourer earns in 3 months. Sar slipped onto your feet. You do none of this yourself. You are, in effect, a living mannequin, and yet this is not seen as strange. It is the privilege of your birthright. While you dress, the rest of the house is already alive with activity. 17 servants have been awake since 4:30 in the kitchens. Eggs, kidneys, muffins, and bacon are sizzling. Upstairs, Maids sweep and dust, polishing surfaces you will barely glance at. The butler reviews the day's deliveries. Wines from France, cigars from Havana, spices from India. The machinery of your household runs smoothly, and you are its master without lifting a single finger in 7 dials. Your morning is stripped bare. There is no breakfast feast, no liveried servant to wait on you. On a cracked table sits a hunk of stale bread, a crust your mother has softened in weak tea so it won't break your teeth. If she has managed to save a penny, there might be fat scraped from a butcher's pan spread thin across the bread. That is luxury in your world. You wash in yesterday's dirty water, splashing your face to wipe away the soot that has already settled on your skin from the smoky air. It doesn't matter. Within hours, you'll be black again inside the narrow, choking walls of a chimney. Your mother ties a threadbare scarf around your neck and presses the crust into your hand. Mind, Mr. Jenkins, she warns. He is the master sweep, the man who owns your labor for the next 7 years. He is cruel, but to defy him is to lose even this meager place. You nod silently, clutching the bread as you step into the dawn. Both Londons awaken side by side, yet they are worlds apart in Belgravia. You descend the grand staircase, passing portraits of ancestors who ruled the states and sat in Parliament. The breakfast room is already laid with silver platters and steaming dishes. Your wife greets you with a polite smile, every strand of her hair arranged to perfection by her maid. Letters and invitations are stacked neatly beside her teacup. She speaks of the evening's dinner with Lord Hartington, of balls and charitable committees, as a footman silently refills your cup. Meanwhile, in 7 dials, you scurry through alleyways where buildings lean so close you could touch both sides at once. The cobbles are slick with filth. Night soil men finish their rounds, hauling buckets of human waste through the streets. Vendors call out as they set up their stalls, selling stale bread, bruised fruit, or coal by the handful. The air is thick, with coal smoke and sewage, a foul fog that stings your eyes and clogs your throat. You reach the sweep's shop just as Mr. Jenkins unlocks the door. His breath reeks of gin, his massive hand cuffs you hard on the ear. Late again, boy. You are not late, but protesting would only bring another blow. Inside, other children wait. The youngest is barely 5, his cheeks hollow, his eyes wide with fear. The oldest is 14, already too big for most chimneys. His future will likely be crime, or the streets. Your day begins with soot and pain. While across town, another boy begins his with tutors, books, and the promise of inheritance. And here is the truth of Victorian England. 2 worlds lived side by side, breathing the same choking London air, but barely acknowledging each other. One world was built on privilege, wealth, and comfort. The other survived on hunger, suffering, and labor. And yet, every so often, their eyes met through a carriage window, across a crowded street. For a fleeting instant, the rich and poor recognized each other as human. But then the moment passed, and London continued its divided march. This is just the morning, and already the distance between these 2 lives feels immeasurable. The morning light finally breaks through London's coal-stained sky. In Belgravia, it filters through tall windows draped in velvet, softened by lace curtains. The house is awake now, bustling with silent precision. Your London townhouse is more than a place to live, it is a fortress of wealth, a stage for your status, and a machine that requires 17 servants to keep it humming. Step into your entrance hall. The marble tiles gleam as if they were polished by angels. In truth, they were scrubbed on hands and knees by housemaids, long before you stirred from your bed. The staircase curves upward in a graceful sweep, its banisters shining like liquid mahogany. Along the walls hang portraits stern ancestors in powdered wigs, military men in scarlet uniforms, ladies painted with pale faces and jeweled hands. They seem to watch as you pass, reminding you of the weight of your lineage. The drawing room is your family's crown jewel. Its walls are covered in silk damask, imported at great expense. A chandelier of cut glass hangs from the ceiling, catching the morning light in tiny rainbows. The fireplace is tall enough for a man to stand inside. Each chair and sofa is upholstered in velvet or brocade, arranged not for comfort but for display. That you can afford excess. This is one of 3 homes you possess. The country estate sprawls across Hampshire, with stables, gardens, and tenants who pay rent to live on your land. Then there is the Scottish Lodge, a retreat for hunting seasons. But here, in London, you are at the centre of society. 30 rooms, each with its own purpose. Morning room, library, dining hall, nursery, music room, billiard room. Privacy is a luxury you ironically do not possess. For every hallway echoes with footsteps of servants. Now cross the city, just a few miles, and step into another home, if you can call it that. 7 Dials. The slum where Tom lives is a world made of shadows. The houses here are not homes but crumbling shells, built cheaply decades ago and left to rot. The walls lean, as though the buildings themselves are tired of standing. Entire families cram into a single damp room. Some basements are so wet the floor squelches underfoot. Tom's home is one such cellar. A single candle sputters in the corner, fighting against the darkness. The walls drip with condensation, streaked black from soot and mould. There is one window, no bigger than a loaf of bread, set high near the ceiling. It looks not onto a street, but onto the ankles of passers-by above. Sunlight, when it reaches through the grime, is a pale stranger here. The room is everything: kitchen, bedroom, parlour. A small iron grate serves as their fire, though coal is expensive, and often the family makes do with scraps of wood or dried dung collected from the streets. Furniture is scarce. A stool with a cracked leg, a broken chair, a table that lists to one side. The family's beds are sacks stuffed with straw and rags. They share them for warmth, bodies pressed close. Lice and fleas a constant nuisance. The stench is overwhelming. Open sewers run through the alleys outside, and the smell seeps through cracks in the wall. Rats scurry in corners. Disease lurks in every drop of water. And yet, for all its filth, this single room is the family's fortress. Rent is cruelly high, often more than half of a labourer's wages. Still, they cling to it, because the alternative is the streets, or worse, the workhouse. Back in Belgravia, your home is not merely a place to live, but a symbol to be displayed. When guests arrive, they are ushered into the reception hall by footmen in livery. Candles blaze, silver gleams, fresh flowers perfume the air. Every detail has been chosen not just for beauty, but for meaning. The gilt-framed mirror says, "We have wealth." The Turkish carpet says, "We command the world's trade routes." The grand piano in the drawing room says, "We are cultured." Even the nursery upstairs, meant for your children, is lavish by ordinary standards. Toys carved from ivory and painted tin, books with gilt edges, a rocking horse as tall as a small pony. Their rooms are nearly as large as entire dwellings in 7 Dials, filled with more objects than Tom's family will own in a lifetime. But grandeur has its price. For all its wealth, the house is never silent, never private. Servants pass in. Corridors, always ready, always listening. Bells ring in the kitchen whenever a master summons. And though the house may gleam, it is also a cage of expectations. Every dinner, every parlour visit, every embroidered cushion whispers the same command. Maintain your place, uphold your rank. Meanwhile, Tom's house commands nothing. It clings to survival. Privacy, ironically, is more common here, not because space allows it, but because society does not care what happens behind these damp walls. No footmen stand guard. No portraits of ancestors judge from the walls. The family's secrets are safe, not from locks or servants' discretion, but from the world's indifference. Still, the house is no sanctuary. The landlord's agent visits each week, demanding rent. Failure means eviction, and eviction, for the poor, often leads to the workhouse, a prison-like institution where families are split apart. Children separated from parents, all forced into degrading labour in exchange for food and a bed. For Tom's mother, keeping this single damp room is worth endless sacrifice. Better lice and hunger together than cleanliness apart. Imagine standing in both rooms at once. In Belgravia, your boots sink into thick carpet. In 7 Dials, your bare feet touch cold stone. In Belgravia, fresh flowers sweeten the air. In 7 Dials, the stench of sewage stings your nose. In Belgravia, paintings of ancestors remind you of legacy. In 7 Dials, the only decoration is a tattered Bible, its cover worn thin by years of desperate handling. And yet, both houses are called home. Both contain families who wake, eat, work, and sleep. Both echo with children's laughter. However brief, both shield their occupants from the cold night air, however imperfectly. London, in all its contradictions, holds both under one sky. Evening in Belgravia brings light. Servants trim wicks, chandeliers glow, fireplaces roar. The house comes alive like a theatre, each room set for a performance of wealth. Guests arrive, coats taken by footmen, drinks poured by butlers, music rising from the piano. The house is not just a shelter. It is a stage, and every dinner, every ball, every conversation is a performance designed to maintain status and forge alliances. Evening in 7 Dials brings darkness. Candles are dear, oil scarcer still. Families huddle close around a single fire, if they can afford fuel. Shadows crawl across damp walls. Rats dart boldly. Entertainment is what they invent themselves. Stories told by firelight, songs sung in weary voices. There are no chandeliers, no polished silver, no velvet drapes. Just the warmth of bodies pressed together and the stubborn will to survive another day. This is the paradox of Victorian houses. 2 buildings that both called themselves home, yet bore no resemblance to one another. For the rich, a house was proof of power, a fortress of lineage. For the poor, it was a battlefield against cold, hunger, and rent collectors. But both were fragile in their own way. For the poor, fragility meant eviction or disease. For the rich, fragility meant scandal, a failed investment, a social misstep. Different dangers, but dangers nonetheless. London in 1860 was not just one city, it was 2 cities, sharing the same streets. Step a few blocks from Belgravia into 7 Dials, and you crossed from opulence to despair. And yet, both worlds depended on each other. The poor cleaned the chimneys, scrubbed the floors, baked the bread, and hold the water that made the rich man's world possible. The rich man's money, in turn, trickled down in wages and rents that barely kept the poor alive. 2 houses, 2 lives, 2 Londons, and the day has only just begun. Morning in Belgravia is a ritual, not a routine. It begins with ceremony and ends with performance. You descend from your bedroom into the morning room, a chamber designed not for necessity but for elegance. The walls are covered in pale silk, the carpet thick and foreign, and the air is faintly perfumed with roses from the conservatory. Waiting for you is a breakfast table laden with choices. You may or may not take, but must always display. The silver gleams under the soft light. Covered dishes reveal eggs, sausages, smoked fish, kidneys, muffins, toast, butter, and fruits not grown anywhere near England at this time of year. Grapes, oranges, even pineapples occasionally grace the table, each one a silent proclamation of wealth. Before refrigeration, such luxuries travelled from distant colonies or hothouses maintained at ruinous expense. To you, it is simply breakfast. To others, it would be an entire week's wages laid out in edible form. Your wife is already seated, porcelain teacup poised between her gloved fingers. She does not pour her own teether. Maid does that. She does not butter her own toaster. Footman stands ready should she wish it. She looks immaculate, though she has been awake for barely an hour. Her maid has already arranged her hair, tightened her corset, and chosen her dress for the morning. She glances at you over the rim of her cup. Jenkins tells me we are expected at the Hartingtons this evening, she says, her tone light but meaningful. You nod. The social obligations of your world are as binding as chains, though silk-wrapped and gilded. Your wife's mornings are filled with correspondence, invitations to balls, charitable committee notes, letters to relatives. Her day is not one of physical labor, but of constant performance, ensuring that her family's name remains polished as brightly as the silver before her. When you lift your fork to take eggs, a footman steps forward to refill your tea. The act is so seamless, you barely notice. You are never alone, never unassisted. Privacy does not exist here. Every moment of your morning is shared with eyes that watch, hands that serve, ears that listen. This is a wealthy morning in Victorian London, gilded, orchestrated, and relentless in its formality. Meanwhile, across the city, Tom's morning is already in motion. There is no silver, no roses, no perfumed air. There is only the hard edge of survival. His mother shouts over the clatter of the street outside, "Up now, or you'll lose your place." Tom pulls on the same ragged clothes he wore yesterday and the day before, trousers stiff with soot, shirt patched until the original fabric can scarcely be found. His shoes have holes in the soles. When it rains, his feet are soaked for hours. Breakfast, if it can be called that, is half a crust of bread. Perhaps a smear of dripping if his mother managed to scrape some from the butcher's pan the night before. Tea is little more than hot water coloured by leaves already used 3 times. Still, he eats quickly, for he must. Hunger is constant, but lateness is punished more harshly than an empty stomach. His mother is a washerwoman. Already she is preparing her day's labour, hauling steaming tubs, scrubbing strangers' clothes until her hands bleed raw. She has no maid, no footman, no valet, only her own strength. At 35, she looks nearer 60, worn down by work and want. "Mind, Mr. Jenkins," she warns Tom, "and try to bring something back." Her words mean theft. A spoon, a handkerchief. anything Tom might pocket while sweeping chimneys. It is dangerous. Punishment for stealing can be prison or even transportation to Australia. But desperation leaves little room for virtue. Tom nods. He knows the risk. He also knows that without a bit of luck, his family may starve. This is a poor child's morning in Victorian London, hurried, hungry, and haunted by survival. Now compare the rituals. Asterisk. In Belgravia, breakfast is abundance. In Seven Dials, breakfast is absence. One table is groaning with food, another offers only scraps. One mother spends an hour supervising her maid in dressing gowns, another begins a 14-hour shift in boiling water. One child complains about Latin lessons, another squeezes into a soot-blackened chimney, where death waits at every turn. Even the act of washing tells the story of two worlds. In your London townhouse, a porcelain basin steams with hot water carried upstairs by servants. Fine soaps, scented with lavender, rest nearby. Towels of clean linen are laid out, replaced daily. Cleanliness is not only a matter of comfort, but of status, proof that you have both the means and the staff to maintain it. In Seven Dials, washing is an afterthought. A cracked basin holds yesterday's grimy water, shared by every member of the household. Soap is a rarity. Towels, if they exist, are rags that never truly dry. Children wipe soot-stained hands on trousers already stiff with dirt. Is not about luxury, but survival, an attempt to keep disease at bay in a city where cholera, typhoid, and tuberculosis lurk in every damp corner. Mourning also means sound in Belgravia. You hear the muted clink of silver, the low murmur of servants, the crackle of a roaring fire. The air carries the faint notes of a piano being tuned upstairs for your daughter's afternoon practice. Outside, the street is calm, lined with carriages and polished facades. Order reigns here. In Seven Dials, the morning soundscape is chaos. The shouts of vendors selling coal and bread, the cries of babies, the rattle of carts over cobbles, the hacking cough of a neighbor already half dead from consumption, the bellow of a drunk who never made it home the night before. Noise is constant, invasive, inescapable. It is the soundtrack of poverty, a reminder that every day is a struggle against both hunger and the city itself. What makes the contrast most brutal is how natural each life feels to those living it. For you in Belgravia, being dressed by a servant is routine. To pour your own tea would feel improper. To tie your own cravat would seem absurd. You don't think of it as privilege, it is simply the way things are. For Tom in Seven Dials, rising hungry is routine. Sharing a single bed with 3 siblings is expected. Watching a neighbor die of disease is sad but unsurprising. He doesn't think of it as injustice. It is simply the way things are. That is the great trap of Victorian life. The system feels natural even when it is anything but. The rich believe they deserve their comfort. The poor accept their suffering as fate. Morning rituals reinforce the illusion day after day until it becomes the rhythm of society itself. By mid-morning, both lives are in motion. In Belgravia, you set off in your carriage, horses gleaming, coachman in livery. You head toward your club or to a solicitor's office to discuss property investments. You do not carry money. You do not need to. You are a man whose presence is credit enough. In Seven Dials, Tom sets off on foot, slipping through alleys that stink of refuse and rot. He joins a band of other boys at the sweepmaster's shop. They are pale, thin, hollow-eyed, but each carries a brush and a sack. They head out into the city like soldiers to battle, knowing that by nightfall some may not return whole. To mornings. Two worlds. One city. Asterisk. If you want to see the future of Victorian England, you don't look at Parliament or the Stock Exchange. You look at its children. How they are raised, what they are taught or denied tells you what the next generation will inherit. And nowhere is the gulf between rich and poor more glaring than in the classroom, or the lack of one. In Belgravia, your son William wakes to a day carefully designed for him. He is 12, but already his life has been mapped out since birth. He will never work with his hands, never dig coal, never sweep a chimney. His destiny is to inherit land, money, and power, and every detail of his education points him toward that future. William's valet, yes. Even children of the wealthy have personal servants pulls back the curtains in his spacious nursery. The room is nearly as large as Tom's entire home, filled with books, toys, and instruments. A globe sits on a polished stand, maps cover the walls, and a cabinet of curiosities holds shells, fossils, and trinkets collected from Britain's colonies. These are not just toys. They are lessons in empire, reminders that the world is Britain's, to explore and control. After a breakfast of eggs, ham, and hot chocolate, William settles into the schoolroom. Here, learning is not a crowded affair, but a private one. His tutors arrive, one after another, each a specialist. First Latin, then Greek, then mathematics. Later, fencing or riding lessons, for physical accomplishment is as important as intellectual polish. The goal is not practicality, but culture. William is being trained not to work, but to rule. When he struggles with Latin grammar, his tutor does not strike him. A gentle correction, perhaps a sigh, but nothing more. He is the son of a gentleman. His failures are inconveniences, not catastrophes. If his handwriting is clumsy, if his sums are sloppy, there will always be someone to write or calculate for him in adulthood. What matters is polish, the kind of education that distinguishes a gentleman from the masses. For William's sister, Emma, the curriculum is different. At 14, she studies with a governess in the drawing room. French, music, painting, embroidery accomplishments, not professions. She is being prepared not for independence, but for marriage. Her education is meant to make her attractive, charming, and entertaining to a future husband. Too much learning would be dangerous, even unfeminine. The very idea of a woman studying science or politics is dismissed with horror. A lady may play Chopin, sketch roses, and speak French at the dinner table, but she must never overshadow her husband's intellect. This is the education of the rich, not about what knowledge is useful, but about what knowledge displays status now. Travel to Seven Dials, where Tom's little sister Mary is learning tuba in a very different setting at 8 years old. Mary is too small for full-time factory work, so she attends a ragged school, one of the charity-run institutions scattered across London. It is a single bare room above a stable, with 60 children crammed inside. The floorboards are worn, the windows cracked, the air heavy with the smell of unwashed bodies. There are no globes, no cabinets of curiosities. The only decoration is a tattered Bible and a CHALKBOARD. Miss Perkins. The teacher is one woman against 60 restless children. She divides them by ability, not age. The older children sit at the back, the youngest at the front. Mary shares a dog-eared primer with 3 others. The book is missing its cover, some pages torn, but it is precious. For Mary, every word she learns is a step towards something beyond the slums. The day begins with a Bible reading, for religion is central here. The wealthy may treat church as social duty, but for the poor, moral instruction is seen as essential discipline. Reformers believe education should make the poor obedient, not ambitious. After prayers, Miss Perkins teaches reading and writing. Mary traces letters on a slate, her fingers numb from the cold. Her handwriting is uneven, but she is proud. She can write her name, now something her mother never learnt to do. Arithmetic follows, but unlike William's exercises with estates and mortgages, Mary's sums are practical. How many yards of cloth for a dress? How much change from a shilling? Skills designed not to open the world, but to keep her firmly in her place. By noon, school is over. The ragged school cannot keep children longer. Families need them home to work. Mary hurries back to help her mother with washing. Education is not the center of her life, it is a luxury snatched between hours of labor. If her mother needs her, she will miss school entirely. Survival always comes first. The difference is not just in what the children learn, but in what they are taught. To expect, William is told he will inherit, manage, and command. His education confirms his place as a leader. Even when he fails, the system bends to catch him. Tutors forgive, parents encourage, opportunities await. For him, education is a ladder already leaning against the wall of power. Mary, by contrast, is told she will work, serve, and endure. Her education confirms her place as a follower. Even when she excels, the system blocks her. A clever girl might earn a place as a shop assistant instead of a washerwoman, but university or office are unimaginable. For her, education is not a ladder but a leash, keeping her from straying too far from her class. Asterisk. And then there is Tom. He has no schooling at all. His apprenticeship as a chimney sweep means his education is soot, sweat, and survival. He knows how to wedge his body in narrow spaces, how to breathe shallowly to endure smoke, how to scrape soot with bleeding fingers. He learns how to take beatings without crying, how to steal without being caught, how to carry hunger like a second skin. These are lessons too, though not written in any book. When Tom sees William one morning, stepping into his carriage with polished boots and a Latin textbook under his arm, Tom looks away quickly, not because he doesn't notice the difference, but because he does, deeply. That boy lives in a world he will never enter, one that might as well be across an ocean. And yet, they breathe the same air, walk the same streets, live in the same city. The Victorian state knew this divide. It even reinforced it. In 1862, the government introduced a payment by results system. Poor schools received money based on how many children passed exams in reading, writing, and arithmetic. But the standards were pitifully low. By age 11, a child was expected only to read a short passage, write from dictation, and solve basic sums. That was considered enough for the working class. Meanwhile, boys like William were reading Cicero, studying algebra, and preparing for Oxford. The message was clear. The poor needed only enough education to follow orders, while the rich needed the education to give them. Still, human spirit finds cracks in the walls. Mary beams when she reads a full sentence aloud. Tom's eyes light up when his sister shows him a new word she has learned. In their cramped room, they gather around the single candle while Mary reads from a borrowed penny story. For a few moments, soot and hunger fade. The words carry them to Egypt, to castles, to adventures their bodies will never know. And in Belgravia, William complains about Latin declensions, rolling his eyes when asked to translate yet another passage. His father insists on discipline, but William drags his feet. He does not know how precious his education is. To him, learning is a burden. To Mary, it is a gift. This is Victorian childhood, one of abundance, one of deprivation, one spent in schoolrooms filled with books, one in cellars filled with smoke, one preparing for power, one preparing for survival. And the strangest truth, both children believe their path is normal. Both accept their future as inevitable. That is how society endures, not just through law or money, but through belief. Education in Victorian England was not just about learning. It was about teaching children their place. And for most, that place would never change. Morning fades into the working hours of the day. But what work means in Victorian England depends entirely on where you were born. For some, it is polished boots and contracts signed in leather-bound offices. For others, it is soot, sweat, and a battle against death before lunchtime. The gentleman's work at 10 o'clock. You sit in your study, a space that is less about function and more about identity. The mahogany desk gleams, the bookshelves display, volumes bound in leather, many unread but impressive to visitors. A globe, a map of the empire, and a few family portraits remind you of your role as both heir and ruler in miniature. Your butler announces the arrival of Mr. Harrington, your solicitor. He bows respectfully as he enters, carrying a leather portfolio. He is a working man, educated, comfortable, but always deferential. He manages what you prefer not to touch directly, the machinery of money. "Good morning, my lord," he says. Opening the folder, the Manchester property is performing admirably. Profits this quarter exceed projections by 15%. You nod, pleased. What he does not mention and what you do not ask is the condition of the workers inside. That factory, the 14-hour days, the children who crawl under machines to clear jams, sometimes losing fingers or worse, the air thick with cotton dust, choking lungs by the age of 30. Those details are invisible in the columns of numbers. To you, the factory is profit, not people. After an hour, Mr. Harrington leaves, and you sign papers worth more than Tom's family will see in a lifetime. Your work is finished. You may now head to your club for luncheon, confident that your investments will continue to grow without your sweat. This is the labor of a Victorian gentleman, making decisions with a pen, while others pay with their bodies. The chimney sweeps work at the same time across London. Tom is climbing. His hands and knees are raw, his chest tight with smoke, his small body scraping against brick as he inches upward. He is 10 years old, but looks 7. His thin frame is his only advantage. "Faster, boy," shouts the sweepmaster from below. The chimney is narrow, still warm from yesterday's fire. The soot clings to his skin, gets in his mouth and eyes, makes him cough until black phlegm comes up. He cannot stop. If he hesitates, the master will light straw at the bottom to smoke him upward. It is a practice so cruel that Parliament has technically outlawed it, but laws mean little in the back alleys of London. Tom pushes harder, scraping away soot with a small brush, stuffing it into a sack slung at his shoulder. Soot itself has value. It can be sold as fertilizer or used in dyes. Even the waste of the rich becomes wealth when channeled through the bodies of the poor. When he finally bursts into the open at the top, gasping, the city sprawls before him in a grey haze. For a moment, he feels free above it all. Then he remembers the climb down is worse. One slip, and he could fall straight into the hearth below, at the kitchen. He emerges black from head to toe, the whites of his eyes shocking against the soot. A maid hands him a crust of bread in pity, quick and furtive so the master won't see. Tom eats it in 2 bites. Hunger is stronger than dignity. By afternoon, he has swept 4 chimneys. His body aches, his lungs burn, but he must continue. There are more houses waiting. For this, he earns a few pennies. Most of it goes to the sweepmaster. Tom will keep none of it for himself. This is the labour of a Victorian poor boy, climbing through fire and filth, where one mistake means death. 2. Faces of work here is the paradox of Victorian England. Both you and Tom are considered working. Your work involves meetings, signatures, and luncheon at your club. Tom's involves squeezing through smoke-blackened tunnels where children often suffocate. Yet society values one as noble and the other as disposable. The divide is not just physical, it is moral. Gentlemen believe themselves to be performing a duty, stewarding wealth, protecting order. The poor are told their labour is their place, their cross to bear, ordained by God or fate. And here lies the cruelty. The system convinces both sides it is natural. You never question why a boy must risk his life for a clean fire. Tom never questions why a man who does not lift a finger is called a worker. Both roles are accepted as destiny. Pride and punishment, there is pride in your work as a gentleman. At the club, you discuss railway shares with peers, exchange views on politics, even consider a speech in Parliament. None of this breaks a sweat. Yet you walk tall, convinced you are serving the nation. There is no pride in Tom's work, only survival. At day's end, his body is a map of bruises and cuts. His lungs rattle when he breathes. He is beaten if he slows, mocked if he cries, invisible to those he serves. And yet, when he brings home even a penny, his mother smiles with weary gratitude. For her, that penny means bread. For Tom, it means another day alive. Work as destiny. Victorian society is built on this divide. Your role as an aristocrat is to supervise, manage, and maintain appearances. Tom's role is to labour, suffer, and obey. But what is striking is how permanent this division feels. No amount of effort will ever raise Tom into your world. No amount of laziness will ever lower you into his. Work is not just occupation, it is identity, inheritance, and prison. A meeting of worlds. Occasionally, the 2 worlds brush against each other. As you step into your carriage one afternoon, polished boots gleaming, you glance at a boy stumbling out of a servant's entrance. He is covered in soot, coughing violently into his ragged sleeve. For a moment, your eyes meet. You look away first. Something in his gaze unsettles you. You will tell yourself it is pity. In truth, it is discomfort and unspoken recognition that your comfort rests on his suffering. Then the carriage rolls on, and the moment is gone. Tom, meanwhile, remembers that glance for hours, not because he expects kindness, but because it is rare for a gentleman to look at him at all. To be seen, even briefly, feels like a crack in the wall dividing their worlds. The invisible chain. By evening, both of you return home. You to your Belgravia townhouse, Tom to his basement room. You are tired from conversation and dinner parties. He is exhausted from soot and hunger. Yet both of you will rise tomorrow and do it again. Because this is the secret of Victorian work. The rich cannot exist without the poor, and the poor cannot escape without the rich. It is an invisible chain, binding 2 worlds together, a chain strong enough to endure for generations. Asterisk. In Victorian England, men were expected to work or manage the work of others, but women carried a different burden. Whether rich or poor, their labor shaped the household and determined survival, yet their work looked nothing alike. For the wealthy, it was embroidery, correspondence, and social maneuvering. For the poor, it was boiling laundry until hands bled, scrubbing floors until knees cracked, or selling dignity on the streets just to feed a child. The lady of the house, your wife, wakes in her elegant chamber, already attended by her maid. Before she even steps out of bed, her day's work begins, not in a factory, not in a slum, but in the complex battlefield of reputation and appearance. First comes dressing, which is not a simple affair. Corset laced tightly by the maid, layers of petticoats, stockings, and a morning gown of silk or fine wool. Jewelry chosen with care, never too ostentatious for morning, but polished enough to signal refinement. The process takes an hour. By the end, your wife looks effortless, though it is anything but. Breakfast awaits in the morning room, where she sorts through invitations. A charity ball next Thursday, a tea with the Duchess of Bedford, a visit to a cousin. Each event carries weight. Attending or declining can build alliances or spark gossip. To outsiders, it may look like leisure. To her, it is constant labor, a job where one misstep could damage the family standing. After breakfast, she sits at her writing desk. Letters must be composed. Thank you notes, acceptances, polite refusals. Each one must be worded with precision. Tone matters. A careless phrase could offend. Her maid hovers, sealing envelopes, ready with more ink. By midday, she supervises the household, not by scrubbing floors herself. Of course, that is beneath her station, but by overseeing the servants. She checks that the table is laid correctly, that flowers are properly arranged, that her children's tutors are punctual. A mistress of the house is not idle. She is a manager, a conductor of invisible labor performed by others. Then comes the charity committee meeting, held in a drawing room across town. Wealthy women are expected to support good causes, hospitals, orphanages, schools. They raise funds, attend galas, and give speeches. But these acts of generosity are also performances of virtue. Charity proves that privilege is deserved by evening. She prepares for another transformation, this time into evening attire for dinner or the opera. Again, the corset tightens, the jewels sparkle, the gown flows. Her work is unceasing. It is not physical exhaustion that threatens her, but social failure. The washerwoman crossed the city. Tom's mother is at work too, but her labor leaves no room for gowns or reputation. She rises before dawn, hauling water from a pump, kindling a fire, and preparing to leave for the washhouse. By 6, she is standing over a steaming tub, scrubbing shirts and sheets for wealthier families. The air is thick with heat and soap fumes, the floor slippery with water. Dozens of women work side by side, their arms red and raw, their backs bent until they ache. For 14 hours, she pounds, scrubs, rinses, and wrings. The rhythm is brutal, unrelenting. Each piece of linen must be spotless, for the wealthy are unforgiving. A single stain could mean losing a client by midday. Her hands are cracked and bleeding, but she cannot stop. She earns a few shillings a week, barely enough to cover rent and bread. Yet this meager wage keeps her children alive. The wash is not just labor, it is a place of quiet despair. Women whisper about sick children, absent husbands, the endless struggle of survival, and sometimes, in hushed voices, about the choice no one wants to make, whether to send a daughter to the streets when laundry wages fail. Respectability, vs. survival. Here lies the cruel irony. Wealthy women are forbidden from working for wages, while poor women must work constantly, often at tasks that destroy their health. For your wife, labor exists in the social sphere, managing appearances, sustaining connections, performing charity. For Tom's mother, labor exists in physical survival, bending, scrubbing, carrying until her body gives way, and both are judged by the same society. If your wife falters, she is ridiculed for failing in elegance. If Tom's mother falters, she is branded lazy, unworthy of aid. The other option. And then there are the women who have no choice at all. When wages from washing or sewing cannot cover rent, some poor women turn to prostitution. Victorian London was filled with them, tens of thousands, by some estimates. They stood under gas lamps in alleyways, or waited outside pubs, offering themselves for pennies. The work was dangerous. Disease spread quickly. Violence from clients or police was constant, and society condemned them even as it relied on their presence. Gentlemen might sneer at prostitutes in daylight while seeking them at night. Moralists preached about fallen women while ignoring the poverty that pushed them there. For these women, work was not just exhausting, it was degrading, terrifying, and often deadly. To evenings by evening, both women return home. Your wife descends the grand staircase in blue silk, ready to charm guests at dinner. She is admired, envied, and judged in every glance. Her work never truly ends. Tom's mother staggers into the tenement, clothes damp with sweat, arms trembling from endless scrubbing. She is not admired or envied. She is invisible unless she fails. Then she will be scorned as careless or immoral. Invisible bonds end, yet their lives are tied together. Your wife's linens are scrubbed by women like Tom's mother. Her gowns are stitched by seamstresses who work 16 hours a day in dim workshops. Her soap is boiled in factories where children stir cauldrons. The work of poor women makes the life of rich women possible, and still they will never meet as equals. One bends over boiling tubs until her back breaks. The other bends her wrist just enough to sign invitations in perfect script. The weight of womanhood in Victorian England. To be a woman was to labour whether in silk or in soot. One worked to maintain privilege, the other to survive poverty, and both, in their own ways, were trapped. Asterisk, the clink of silver spoons against porcelain is the first music of your midday. You sit at the long table in your Belgravia townhouse, where even an ordinary luncheon is a ceremony. Footmen move silently, in livery, their gloved hands setting dishes before you with precision. First a clear soup, delicate and shimmering, then fish, poached and dressed with herbs, followed by a meat course rich with sauces crafted by a French chef whose salary exceeds that of government officials. Each dish is paired with the correct wine, decanted hours earlier. The food is art, display, and wealth made edible. You eat slowly, not out of hunger, though hunger is something you rarely experience, but because haste would be vulgar. Appetite is to be controlled, never indulged in greedily. You have learned since childhood that to eat elegantly is as important as to speak correctly or dress properly. The meal ends with pudding, fruits, nuts, and cheese, and when you finally set your fork down, you are comfortably full. Your stomach a quiet afterthought. Asterisk, across the city, Tom is also at lunch, though calling it lunch feels almost cruel. He crouches by a wall behind a house where he has just finished a chimney, wiping soot from his mouth with the back of his sleeve. The maid slipped him a crust of bread, thick and stale, and a small cup of water when the sweet master wasn't. Watching, he eats it in 2 bites, each one barely taking the edge off the emptiness gnawing at his stomach. He knows better than to ask for more. If he is caught begging, the master will cuff him so hard he'll see stars. The maid's kindness is dangerous enough. She risks punishment too. Still, that crust is the only thing Tom will eat until evening. If there is bread left at home, hunger is not an emergency in his world. It is the background noise of life, always present, shaping every choice, every thought. Asterisk food for the wealthy is abundance. Food for the poor is absence. In your household, the kitchen is alive with noise long before dawn. Cooks and kitchen maids prepare mountains of food, even though much of it will never be eaten. A lavish table is not just about nourishment but reputation. Guests must see plenty, dishes must dazzle, and no one should leave without being impressed. Leftovers may be sent to the servants or discarded entirely. Waste is invisible to you. It is the privilege of excess. Asterisk. In Tom's home, there is no waste, because there is barely anything to begin with. His mother stretches every penny at the market, bargaining for bruised vegetables and bones with little meat clinging to them. She boils the bones into thin soup, thickened with barley or potatoes if she can afford them. Sometimes she scrapes fat from a butcher's pan and saves it in a jar dripping, spread on bread when nothing else is available. Meat is a Sunday treat if they are lucky. Fruit is nearly unheard of. The children's bellies are never truly full, and their bodies show it. Tom, at 10, looks 7. His sister at 8 has the body of a child half her age. Malnutrition shrinks them, stunts them, and steals their strength long before adulthood. At your dinner parties, the table is an elaborate stage. Candles glitter against polished silver. Crystal glasses catch the light. Guests exchange polite words about politics, or music while footmen hover, refilling plates with venison, pheasant, salmon, or lamb. Each course flows into the next with choreographed grace. To eat here is to participate in theatre, each bite a line in a script of wealth. Even the cutlery matters, different forks and knives for fish, meat, putting so many pieces of silverware that an uninitiated guest might be lost. But you never are. You grew up in this ritual. You know every gesture by instinct meanwhile, in 7 dials. Tom eats dinner on the floor of a cramped room shared by his entire family. Tonight there is a pot of soup, cabbage, carrots, and scraps of potato simmered in water. His mother has divided it carefully, ladling into chipped bowls, making sure each child gets at least something. Bread is rationed with equal care. If Tom is lucky, he'll get a hunk with a smear of dripping. The children eat quickly, slurping at the broth, soaking bread in the liquid to make it feel like more. There is no wine, no dessert, no ceremony. Only survival, and even then, it is never enough. They go to bed with bellies still aching. The smells tell the same story. Your dining room fills with the fragrance of roasted meats, rich sauces and spices from India, cloves and cinnamon carried halfway across the world to perfume your palate. Tom's home smells of smoke, damp, and thin cabbage soup, sometimes tinged with the sourness of spoiled milk if they manage to buy any at all. Hunger makes the smell of food from the street torture. When he passes bakeries, the scent of fresh bread nearly drives him mad. When your carriage rolls past, and he sees a boy his age step out carrying sugared buns wrapped in paper, he feels not jealousy, but disbelief. To him, such food seems unreal, like a dream that belongs to someone else's. Life, the human body itself, reflects the divide. You are well fed, your frame strong, your cheeks flushed with health. You rarely think of illness as tied to what you eat. To Tom, food and survival are the same thing. Hunger weakens his limbs, makes his head spin when he climbs. He has seen friends collapse from exhaustion, never to rise again. Malnutrition leaves children with crooked spines, swollen bellies, brittle bones. Doctors call it rickets. In 7 Dials, they call it ordinary. Even drink divides your worlds. At your table, wines are paired with each course, port follows, brandy ends the night. Water is filtered and clean, safe to drink, but rarely chosen. For Tom, water comes from a shared pump down the street, often polluted, sometimes deadly. Cholera spreads through it like wildfire. He drinks it anyway, because he has no choice. Tea, so weak it looks like dirty water, is a luxury they stretch by reusing leaves multiple times. For you, food is comfort, pleasure, and power. For Tom, food is life itself, rationed, begged, stolen, or dreamed of. The table you sit at and the hearth he crouches by are only a few miles apart, yet they are different planets, and both of you believe it normal. You never wonder why a man should have more food than he could possibly eat while children nearby starve. Tom never wonders why some men dine on pheasant while he chews stale bread. The system has taught you both to accept it. Night falls on both homes. In Belgravia, a desert of oranges and pineapples is served, fruit that cost more to ship than Tom's family pays in rent for a year. Guests laugh lightly, sipping sweet wines, unaware that across London a boy lies in bed with his stomach cramping from emptiness. In 7 Dials, Tom curls on a straw pallet, the faint ache of soup still in his belly, but nowhere near enough. He dreams of bread warm, soft bread, with butter that melts as it touches. He has never tasted such a thing. In your dreams, you never think of hunger at all, and that is how food tells the truth of Victorian England. One table overflowing, one table bare, one family wasting, another starving. The empire prided itself on progress, invention, and abundance. Yet for millions, even a crust of bread was a battle. 2 Londons, 2 meals, 1 city divided by hunger and plenty. Saturday arrives, and with it, the notion of leisure, though what leisure means, is as divided as the streets of London themselves. In Belgravia, you wake later than usual, 8 o'clock instead of 7, indulging in what is considered a relaxed morning. Breakfast is leisurely, the Times spread out before you, its pages already ironed by the butler so that the ink will not smudge your fingers. You sip chocolate or tea, nibble buttered toast, and consider whether the day's first activity will be a ride in Hyde Park or a visit to your club. The bay mare is saddled by the time you step outside, her coat gleaming, her tack polished. When you mount and ride toward Rotten Row, you are not exercising so much as displaying. Everyone who matters is there, peers, MPs, fashionable ladies in riding habits, cut to perfection, a nod to the right man, a bow to the right woman. These are not gestures of politeness, they are investments, signals of belonging in the network. That sustains privilege. Even your choice of horse speaks of status. It is not leisure as escape. It is leisure as theatre. For Tom, leisure begins the moment his master dismisses him early on Saturday, though early still means hours of soot and aching limbs. He clutches the single penny he has saved all week, protecting it as though it were gold. That penny is his doorway to escape, however brief. He runs with a friend, another sweet boy, to the penny gaff, a small theatre crammed above a shop. Wooden benches, dim oil lamps, air thick with tobacco smoke. For that single coin, the boys sit shoulder to shoulder with labourers, servants, and factory girls, their eyes wide as jugglers toss knives. Comedians sing bawdy songs, and a trained pig trots across the stage. The laughter is rough and loud. The joke's coarse, but for Tom it is magic. The soot, the hunger, the bruises fade for an hour as he laughs so hard his stomach hurts more than his lungs. When the show ends, he leaves grinning, the sound of the audience still echoing in his ears. For him, leisure is not theatre in the sense of performance for status. It is survival for the spirit, a way to remember he is still a boy and not just a machine climbing chimneys. Your afternoon continues with civilized pursuits. Perhaps a cricket match at Lord's, where gentlemen in fine coats cheer politely as their sides compete. Perhaps the races, where horses thundered down the track while you and your friends wager in sums that could feed Tom's entire family for a year. Even when you lose, it is amusement, not disaster. Losing gracefully, sipping brandy, laughing at your poor luck, this, too, is part of being a gentleman. You never gamble more than you can afford to lose, and in truth, you can afford to lose much. Afterward, you might return to your club for cards, for cigars, for conversation that matters less for its content than for the connections it maintains. Leisure is the glue of your world, binding men of your class together in shared rituals of play that are never simply play. For Tom, afternoon leisure means street games with other children. King of the castle played on a pile of rubble, a half-broken hoop rolled with a stick, a ball made from rags. These games are fierce, competitive, physical. They are also fleeting. At any moment, an adult might call him back to errands, chores, or work. Still, when he shouts with joy at toppling a friend from the rubble pile, when he runs fast enough to forget his hunger for a few minutes, it feels like freedom. Leisure for him is fragile and stolen, never guaranteed, always snatched. Between demands for survival, when evening falls, the divide grows sharper still. You and your wife dress for the opera. She in silk, hair pinned with diamonds. You in black coat, white waistcoat, bow tie tied to perfection by your valet. The carriage rolls to Covent Garden, where gaslights blaze and ladies in satin gowns alight from carriages, one after another. You are shown to your box, where the stage is only half the show. The other half is the audience itself. Peers, duchesses, industrial magnates. Opera glasses lift as often to scan the crowd as to follow the performance. The music swells Verdi, Mozart, but beneath it hums the endless negotiation of status. You bow to Lord Westmoreland, speak briefly to Lady Elizabeth, exchange a few words with Lord James about the Punjab. It is leisure, yes, but it is also business, marriage, prospects, politics, reputation. You are as much on display as the soprano. In 7 Dials, Tom's leisure ends with supper thin vegetable soup. Maybe a scrap of meat if fortune has smiled, and afterward, the family gathers around the fire. There is no opera here, but there are stories. His father, exhausted from scavenging metal on the Thames shore, tells of his childhood in Yorkshire, spinning tales of ghost horses that appear in the mist. His sister Mary reads haltingly from a tattered penny dreadful borrowed from a neighbour, her voice bringing to life cursed pharaohs and daring explorers. They laugh, they shiver, they listen, pressed close around the single candle. Sometimes his father plays a tin whistle, and the children clap along, their voices rising in ragged harmony. It costs nothing, yet it feeds them in ways soup cannot. It is joy built from scraps, leisure carved out of exhaustion. Sunday leisure is another mirror. For you, church, in the family pew, where your presence is not simply piety, but proof of standing. The vicar nods toward you with subtle deference. Afterward, Sunday dinner is the grandest meal of the week, often shared with extended family. The afternoon passes with reading, perhaps a walk in the park, conversation, or music performed by your daughter. Sabbath leisure is dignified, quiet, a display of moral respectability. For Tom's family, Sunday is also for church, though the chapel they attend is bare, the benches hard, the sermon long and sharp with warnings about sin. Still, Sunday dinner is the best of the week, a small piece of meat, if they can afford it, stretched into soup with potatoes and carrots. The afternoon might mean a walk to a park, the only green space the children will ever see, or visits to neighbors, or simply resting by the fire. For them, Sunday leisure is less about display and more about respite, rare pause in the grind of survival. And yet, beneath all the differences, leisure reveals something universal. Both rich and poor seek joy, connection, escape. You find it in opera boxes and cricket matches, Tom in penny gaffs and street games. You sip brandy in polished clubs. He gulps laughter in smoky rooms above shops. Both are, in their way, trying to remember that life is not only labor, yet where you are free to shape leisure into power, Tom can only snatch moments where he can, knowing tomorrow will drag him back into soot and hunger. Night deepens. In Belgravia, you return from the opera to your lit townhouse, servants waiting to undress you, supper laid for guests who lingered late. In Seven Dials, Tom curls with his siblings on a straw pallet, belly still aching, soot still in his hair. The echoes of laughter at the penny gaff fading into sleep. 2 evenings, 2 worlds, 1 city. Leisure divided as surely as bread, but still, in both, the same small human hope that for a few hours, life might be something more than survival. The fog rolls heavy across London, that thick yellow-brown haze people call a pea souper, pressing against windows, sliding under doors, seeping into lungs. In Belgravia, your youngest child coughs in the night, a small body twisting under linen sheets, cheeks flushed with fever. The nursemaid, sleeping in the adjoining room, hears the sound instantly and rushes to her side. Within minutes, the household is alert. The butler is sent to fetch the family physician, Dr. Reynolds, who arrives before dawn in his polished carriage. He steps into the nursery, his bag of instruments at the ready, his manner calm and professional. He listens to your daughter's chest with a stethoscope of polished brass, feels her pulse, checks her tongue. Bronchitis, he declares, his voice steady. We must take care. He scribbles prescriptions with a practiced hand cough syrups, powders to reduce fever, a tonic to strengthen her blood. They will be prepared at the apothecary with the finest ingredients, delivered by a footman within the hour. A steam tent is set up around the bed, warm sheets draped to form a tiny chamber filled with eucalyptus-scented vapor. Servants carry up beef tea and calf's foot jelly, foods believed to restore strength. Your wife sits beside the bed, reading softly, while the nurse adjusts pillows and dampens cloths. There is fear, yes, but never desperation. Illness is an interruption. not a catastrophe. The machinery of wealth shifts instantly into place, throwing its full weight against the fever, buying comfort and time, across the city in 7 dials. Tom's younger brother wakes coughing too, but here the cough is not answered by nurses and doctors. His mother stirs in the darkness of their single room, feeling his forehead with rough, cracked hands. He burns with fever, his breathing shallow, labored. She whispers to her husband, but he only sighs. They cannot afford a doctor. The parish doctor, overworked and dismissive, might see the boy if she carries him to his office. But that means hours of waiting and a day's wages lost. Instead, she does what mothers in her neighborhood have always done. She fetches a basin of cold water, dips a rag, and lays it on his forehead. In the morning, she sends Tom to fetch Mrs. Wilson, the neighborhood healer, a widow who has seen countless sick children and knows the remedies passed down through generations. Mrs. Wilson examines the boy, listens to his chest, and shakes her head. Bronchitis, most like. Mustard plaster on his chest. Keep him warm as you can. Woundwort tea for the cough. She leaves instructions for mixing ground mustard with flour, spreading it on cloth, and pressing it against the chest until the skin reddens. The tea will be brewed from herbs gathered cheaply or found in markets. It may help, it may not. There are no guarantees here in Belgravia. Your child lies in a well-ventilated nursery, tended night and day by a nurse who never leaves her side. The sheets are changed twice daily. The fire is carefully kept, never too hot, never too cold. Dr. Reynolds returns by evening, praising the child's resilience, reassuring your wife that recovery is likely. The household continues as usual, meals served, visitors received, conversations carried on, though all with one ear tilted toward the nursery. In 7 dials, Tom's mother tries to continue her work at the wash-house, but her mind is never far from her son. She leaves Mary, the 8-year-old, in charge. Mary sits by her brother with the rag and the plaster, trying to keep him comfortable. The room is damp, cold, the air thick with smoke and sewage. The fire burns weakly because coal costs money they do not have. When the boy refuses food, Mary tries to coax him with a crust dipped in broth, but he turns his face away. She listens to his breathing grow harsher and prays quietly. The contrast is not only in care, but in expectation. In your house, illness is met with calm confidence. The best doctor, the best medicines, the best food, all these make recovery likely. In Tom's home, illness is terror. A cough can become death. A fever can burn through a child in days. Disease is everywhere: cholera in the water, typhoid in the drains, tuberculosis in the air. It is not unusual for a family to lose half their children before adulthood. To be poor is to live under the constant shadow of loss. When tuberculosis strikes in Belgravia, Dr. Reynolds might prescribe rest in a sanatorium, perhaps in the clear air of the countryside. The patient will spend months reclining in gardens, eating rich food, walking in clean air, tended by nurses. Recovery is possible, even likely. When tuberculosis strikes in 7 dials, the victim keeps working until they cannot stand. They cough blood in the same bed where siblings sleep beside them. There is no sanatorium, no rest, only the workhouse infirmary if they collapse completely. To enter there is to give up hope, for most never leave. Asterisk in your home, even small illnesses are marked by comfort. A sore throat is eased with honey, lemon, and special lozenges. A headache earns a warm bath drawn by servants, scented oils added. To the water, in Tom's home, a sore throat is ignored. A headache is endured. The body must work, no matter its pain, because hunger does not wait for healing. For you, health is assumed and illness is a disruption. For Tom, illness is the constant background, an enemy waiting in every cough and shiver. Numbers tell the story plainly. In wealthy neighborhoods like Belgravia, mortality hovers around 15 per thousand each year. In slums like Seven Dials, it is double, sometimes worse. Among children, the gap is devastating. In Tom's world, 1 child in 3 dies before reaching 5 years old. In yours, most live to adulthood. The difference is not in fate, but in food, in water, in medicine, in space, in clean sheets and warm fires, in clean lungs and careful hands, in wealth, asterisk. The night deepens in both homes. In Belgravia, you visit the nursery before bed, your daughter smiling weakly as you pat her hand and murmur encouragement. You retreat to your own chamber, reassured that she will recover. In Seven Dials, Tom's mother sits awake through the night, watching her boy struggle for breath, terrified that each hour might be his last. She prays he will see morning. When dawn comes, he is still alive, his fever slightly broken. Relief floods the room, though. The battle is not over. In your house, the nursemaid reports that the child's cough has eased, and Dr. Reynolds confirms she will recover. Both children may live, but the journeys could not be more different. Health in Victorian London is not about the body alone. It is about where you live, what you can afford, what class you were born into. The same illness in one house is an inconvenience. In another, it is a tragedy. And most of the time, the world accepts this as natural, as if God himself decreed that some children deserve medicine and others deserve only mustard plasters and fear, asterisk. Morning light filters through heavy curtains in Belgravia, and young William, 12 years old, stirs beneath a feather-filled quilt in his private bedroom. The boy's valet, Peters, is already at his side, drawing the curtains, setting out fresh clothes, speaking softly as though waking a prince. "Good morning, Master William," he says, laying a linen shirt and wool trousers neatly on a chair. There is no rush, no panic, no struggle to rise. His day is planned, ordered, secure. A tray of hot chocolate and toast appears, as if by magic, brought up by a maid who curtsies before leaving. William yawns, stretches, and complains lightly about the Latin lesson that waits for him at 9. Peters chuckles, reminding him that a gentleman's education is his birthright. After breakfast in the nursery, William walks down the hall to the schoolroom, a space filled with globes, maps, and rows of books. Mr. Crawford, the Latin tutor, is already waiting, his satchel open, his thin spectacles perched on his nose. Lessons begin promptly. The boy translates Cicero, stumbles over declension sighs at the tedium. His mistakes are corrected gently. The pressure is never unbearable. The education is designed not to crush him, but to mold him into a man who will one day manage estates, investments, perhaps even sit in Parliament. Meanwhile, in Seven Dials, Tom is already at work by dawn, his knees and elbows grinding against brick, his lungs burning with soot. At 10 years old, he is the size of a much younger child, malnourished but nimble enough to climb chimneys that grown men cannot. Education is not a room of globes and maps, but the sound of his master's barked orders, the scrape of brushes against soot, the fear of suffocation in narrow flues. His sister Mary, however, manages a few hours at a ragged school 3 mornings a week. She arrives in her patched dress, clutching a slate, her hair brushed by her mother with as much care as poverty allows. The schoolroom is nothing like William's. One teacher, Miss Perkins, struggles to control 60 children of all ages crammed into a single cold room above a stable. There are few books, fewer pencils. The walls are bare except for a battered Bible. The day begins with prayers, then simple reading, then sums scratched on slates. Mary loves it, treasures it, even though she often comes hungry, her belly aching too loudly for her to concentrate. Still, she raises her hand proudly to read aloud, piecing together sentences from tattered primers. For her, every new word is a step into a wider world. For William, every new word is just another brick in the fortress of privilege he already inhabits. The divide is not in intelligence. Both children are curious, bright, full of questions. The divide is in expectation. William is taught Latin and mathematics, not because he loves them, but because they mark him as a gentleman. His education is not meant to prepare him for earning a living. Gentlemen do not work with their hands. It is meant to prepare him for rule over estates, over servants, over society. Mary learns basic literacy because society believes that is all she needs. The revised Code of 1862 pays schools by results, but only for reading, writing, and simple arithmetic. No algebra, no history beyond Bible stories, no science. By 11, a poor child is expected to read a paragraph, write a dictation, and add figures. That is sufficient, the government says, for their station in life. To hope for more is to invite disappointment. William's day stretches in lessons. After Latin comes mathematics with Mr. Baxter, who frames problems in terms of estate management. If your income is £5,000 per annum and your London townhouse costs £800, how much remains for investment? William calculates, proud when he gets it right. These lessons are disguised rehearsals for the life he will live, making decisions about money, land, inheritance. After lunch, he learns history and geography from Mr. Thompson, who lectures on the grandeur of the British Empire, tracing pink territories on a world map with his cane. It is the duty of a gentleman, he explains, to carry civilization to less fortunate peoples. The boy listens, his imagination filled with distant lands he may one day govern, though he barely knows the names of London's poor streets a mile away. Mary's lessons, if she can attend them, are interrupted by survival. Sometimes she must miss school to mind the baby, sometimes to help her mother at the wash-house. When she does attend, she clings to the lessons with desperation. She practices sums. How many pennies make a shilling? How much change from a half-crown if bread costs twopence? The arithmetic of survival. She asks when she will learn copperplate writing. And Miss Perkins promises soon, though there are not enough slates to go around. Mary dreams of one day being a shop girl, wearing clean dresses, standing behind a counter instead of kneeling by a washtub. It is not Oxford or Cambridge, she imagines, only a little more dignity than her mother has. Yet even that hope is fragile, constantly threatened by hunger, illness, or the need to earn. At midday, William breaks from lessons for fencing or cricket practice, running across manicured lawns, swinging his bat under the watchful eye of Peters. Physical education is part of being a gentleman, teaching sportsmanship and command. In 7 Dials, Tom returns home briefly to eat a crust of bread, maybe a scrap of cheese if lucky. Mary sometimes rushes to show him a word she learned, writing it clumsily on a scrap of paper. He marvels at her ability, even though he will never have the chance to learn the same. Knowledge for him is stories whispered by neighbors, scraps of information overheard in houses he cleans, the imagination sparked by his sister's readings. In Belgravia, the education of girls takes another form. William's sister Emma is tutored by a governess in music, French, needlework, and drawing. She practices the piano in the drawing room, her governess reminding her that accomplishments are a lady's ornament, proof of refinement. Emma enjoys reading novels in secret, but knows that too much learning is frowned upon for girls of her class. A woman is to be decorative, graceful, prepared for marriage. Her studies are rehearsals for evenings when she will be asked to play before guests, or converse politely in French, or embroider while gentlemen discuss politics. Mary's education, by contrast, is the opposite of ornamental. She learns only what is deemed necessary to make her useful as a worker. No French, no piano, not even geography. Her reading primer warns her to be obedient. Her arithmetic keeps her in check. Her writing is barely encouraged. For one girl, knowledge is a social display. For the other, it is survival pared down to its bones. As evening falls, William closes his Cicero and joins his father in the study, proudly reporting that his declensions are improving. His father nods, mentioning casually that he will soon attend Harrow, as all Harrington men do. William swallows his nerves, knowing boarding school will be harsh, but also knowing it is inevitable. His future is laid out like a railway line. Harrow, Cambridge, Parliament, estates, inheritance. Mary, sitting by the fire in the single room, reads haltingly from a borrowed penny dreadful to her brothers, her voice carrying over the coughs and the sounds of the street outside. Her father nods with pride as she stumbles through the words. Clever girl, he says. For her, the future is not mapped at all. It is a fog, uncertain, with only the faint hope that education might give her a chance to step outside the path of drudgery. And so 2 children, born the same year in the same city, live entirely different versions of education. One learns that the world is his to govern. The other learns that the world is against her, but she might just grasp a sliver of it through letters scratched on a slate. Both fall asleep that night in different beds, one soft with linen sheets, the other hard with straw butt. Both dream, in their own way, of the future. For one, it is certain. For the other, it is fragile, but desperately precious. Asterisk, asterisk. Saturday dawns in Belgravia with a slower rhythm than weekdays. Young William wakes later than usual. Sunlight already peeking through heavy curtains as Peters, his valet, prepares a riding jacket and polished boots. The boy is excited today. After his light breakfast of eggs, toast, and chocolate, he joins his father for a ride in Hyde Park. Rotten Row is crowded with carriages and horses, a living stage where the wealthy parade themselves. William's mare gleams from daily grooming, her saddle polished to perfection. He rides with pride, nodding to acquaintances, his father correcting his posture with the faintest of glances. This is play in his world, physical exercise that doubles as social rehearsal, learning to be seen, learning to move among people who will one day be his peers and allies. After riding, he returns to the townhouse, where a tutor in fencing awaits. Swordplay is more than sport. It is discipline, control, the art of moving like a gentleman. His sister Emma spends her leisure differently. Her governess supervises her at the pianoforte, practicing the piece she will play at a musical evening. Later in the week, she sighs, wishing she could read novels all afternoon, but instead she repeats scales until her fingers ache. Later, she sketches with pencil on fine paper. Her drawings carefully admired by her mother as accomplishments suitable for a future wife. Leisure is never just leisure here. It is performance, preparation, a showcase for refinement. Across the city, Tom has already spent his morning sweeping chimneys, but Saturday brings one small gift, a half day. By 2 in the afternoon, his work is done, and he clutches a penny in his soot-blackened hand. It is his only coin to spend freely, and today he and his friend Eddie run down the crooked lanes toward a penny gaff, a makeshift theatre above a shop. Inside, the air is thick with smoke and laughter. For a single penny, they squeeze onto a rough bench, eyes wide as the show begins. A woman sings bawdy songs the boys only half understand. A juggler tosses knives in dizzying arcs. Then comes Funny Joe with his trained pig, and the crowd roars with laughter. Tom laughs so hard his sides ache. For 1 hour, the soot, the hunger, the fear disappear. For 1 hour, he is only a boy again, delighting in the absurd. When the show ends, the boys spill into the street, repeating jokes, mimicking the pigs. Tricks, their voices bright against the grey afternoon. For children of wealth, play often means sports. Cricket matches on private lawns, croquet on neatly clipped grass. Hunting parties for older boys, supervised dances for girls, for children. Of poverty, play means the streets. In alleys between leaning houses, Tom and his friends invent games with whatever they find. A pile of rubble becomes a fortress. A tin can becomes a ball. They play king of the castle, daring each other to climb and hold ground. They laugh, they scrape knees, they shout with unrestrained joy. Play is not refined, not supervised, but it is fierce and alive. Sometimes it borders on danger, racing behind carts, sneaking into yards, climbing rooftops, but danger is already part of their daily lives, and games are simply another way of facing it. In Belgravia, leisure is also reading, though rarely alone. Families gather in drawing rooms where one member reads aloud from Dickens or Eliot, voices rising and falling as the story unfolds. Evenings might include charades, card games, or music performed by guests. For William, books are plentiful, filling shelves in the schoolroom and study. He can lose himself in histories of Rome, stories of the Empire, or adventure tales written for boys of his class. For Tom, books are treasures almost beyond reach. The penny dreadfuls that circulate through his neighborhood are passed hand to hand, tattered and stained, read aloud to those who cannot read for themselves. His sister Mary reads by firelight from a borrowed story paper, tales of cursed tombs, or highwaymen, her voice carrying through the crowded room. Tom listens, his imagination soaring far beyond the soot-filled chimneys he knows. Stories are their doorway to worlds otherwise forbidden. Sunday leisure reveals another divide. For William's family, it means attending church in fine clothes, their pew polished and private. Afterward comes Sunday dinner, the most elaborate meal of the week, followed by a stroll in the park or quiet reading at home. The Sabbath is marked by restraint, no loud games, no frivolity, only dignified rest. For Tom's family, Sunday also means church, but theirs is a bare chapel, long sermons on sin and salvation, benches hard against weary backs. Afterward, they may splurge on a small piece of meat, the only one that week, before visiting neighbors or walking in a public park. For the children, Sunday afternoon might bring a rare freedom, games in the street, songs with friends, even watching street performers juggle or sing for coins. The Sabbath is supposed to be rest, but for the poor, rest often means simply not working for half a day. What unites both worlds, despite their differences, is that leisure is never just idle. For the wealthy, leisure is a display of refinement, proof of education, rehearsals for society. For the poor, leisure is escape, relief from the grind, a fragile reclaiming of childhood. One child rides a shining horse beneath the gaze of aristocrats. Another tumbles in the dirt of an alley. Both laugh, both feel joy, but one grows up learning that pleasure is his right. The other grows up learning it is a stolen moment, easily lost. That as evening falls in Belgravia, William joins his parents at the opera. Dressed in black tie, he sits in a gilded box, opera glasses in hand, listening half to the music and half to the murmurs of society all around. Across the city, Tom crouches near the fire as Mary stumbles through a story of an explorer in Egypt, his mind filled with pyramids and mummies. His father hums a folk tune on a tin whistle, and the children clap along. It is not refined, not grand, but it is theirs, and for a little while it is enough. The leisure of children in Victorian England is not equal. It is divided, shaped, controlled by class. Yet beneath the silk curtains and the soot-stained rags, there beats the same desire to laugh, to imagine, to escape. And though the worlds never meet, in dreams and in play, all children chase the same fleeting thing. Freedom, gas lamps flicker to life along London's broad streets as the day fades. In Belgravia, your townhouse glows warm against the night. Every window lit, carriages waiting outside as guests arrive for dinner. Inside, the dining room gleams with polished silver, crystal glasses, and porcelain plates set with perfect precision by footmen who glide silently around the table. You sit at the head, your wife at the other end, and Lady Elizabeth seated strategically at your side. Conversation drifts easily, light at first, then heavier once the women withdraw. Politics, investments, cotton prices in India, railway spoken of in low, confident tones over port and cigars. It is late when the last guest departs, and you climb the wide staircase, passing portraits of ancestors who watch with painted eyes, their legacies heavy on your shoulders. In your chamber, your valet waits to undress you, folding garments, preparing night clothes, setting aside boots. The ritual of bedtime is slow, deliberate, as though sleep itself must be dressed in ceremony. Finally, you sink into a feather-stuffed mattress draped in fine linen, the fire glowing in the hearth. A book rests on your bedside table, perhaps a political journal, perhaps a volume of poetry. You read a little, your eyelids heavy. The house hums faintly around you, servants still at work below. But in your chamber there is only quiet and comfort. In 7 Dials, night looks different. Darkness presses against the small window of the basement room where Tom's family huddles together. The day's fire has burned low, embers casting faint light across weary faces. Supper was thin soup and bread, enough to quiet hunger, but not enough to satisfy. Tom's father, back from a day scavenging, speaks in a low voice about a scrap of brass he found, promising it will fetch a few pennies at market. His mother mends clothes by the dim glow, her hands raw from endless scrubbing. Mary reads haltingly from a tattered pamphlet borrowed from the ragged school, her voice steady, even as her eyes strain in the poor light. The children listen, Tom most of all, his imagination soaring with each unfamiliar word, carrying him far beyond the soot and grime. The story ends, and for a moment the family is silent, lost in the dream of a world unlike their own. Then his father takes up a tin whistle, playing a folk tune from his childhood, and the children clap softly in rhythm, their laughter brief but real. Asterisk. As the fire dies, the family prepares for bed. There are no separate rooms here, no privacy. Everyone lies close together, children piled on straw mattresses or even the bare floor. Blankets are thin, patched too many times, barely enough against the cold that seeps through the damp walls. Rats scurry in the corners, and the stench of the nearby sewer creeps through cracks. Outside, the noises of the street carry late into the night arguments. Drunken songs, the shuffle of footsteps on cobblestones. Yet even here, before sleep, there are small rituals. A mother smoothing a child's hair, a father muttering a rough blessing, a sister whispering good night. Comfort found in closeness rather than luxury. As both houses fall into silence, dreams come. In Belgravia, William drifts into visions shaped by stories and lessons. He dreams of standing at the dispatch box in Parliament, commanding the room with eloquence, or riding across an Indian plain, the empire at his back. His dreams mirror his education, his future already mapped. Emma dreams of playing the piano before a crowd that applauds, of wearing gowns glittering with jewels, of a marriage that secures her place. These are not fantasies born of desperation, but rehearsals for a life already promised. Even in their sleep, privilege holds them. In 7 Dials, Tom dreams differently. He dreams of climbing not chimneys this time, but trees in green fields. He is never seen, his lungs filled with fresh air instead of soot. He dreams of eating until his belly is full, of shoes that fit, of hands that no longer ache. His sister Mary dreams of books, whole shelves of them, clean and new, her fingers turning pages she can read without stumbling. She dreams of writing her name in bold letters across a paper that belongs only to her. These dreams are not rehearsals, but escapes, fragile illusions that will vanish with morning. Yet they are precious, because they are the only place where freedom exists. The night deepens. In Belgravia, a servant keeps watch in case the master or mistress calls. The air is warm, the sheets soft, the silence absolute. In 7 Dials, a cough echoes through the small room, one of the children stirring restlessly. The air is damp, cold creeping into bones, and silence never lasts long. But sleep comes to both houses, carrying rich and poor alike into the democracy of dreams. For a few hours, the rigid hierarchies of Victorian England loosen. A chimney sweep can fly across rooftops. A young gentleman can walk barefoot in fields. A washerwoman can close her eyes and rest without fear. Morning will come, as it always does, and with it the walls between their worlds will rise again. The wealthy will wake to servants and schedules, to lessons and leisure, to futures certain as the sunrise. The poor will wake to hunger and work, to soot and struggle, to futures uncertain as the fog. Yet for this one night, in the stillness of sleep, they are the same, human, fragile, dreaming. And as you lie in your own bed, centuries later, you hold the comfort they never knew. You have heat at the turn of a dial, light at the flick of a switch, medicine at the first sign of illness. You are richer in these simple things than even the grandest Victorian aristocrat. Perhaps that is the lesson as the lamps dim and the whispers of Victorian London fade into the dark. The past was divided into 2 worlds, rich and poor, but both are gone now, leaving behind only stories, warnings, and dreams. You are free to drift into sleep with gratitude, knowing that the hardships they endured belong to history. The soot has cleared, the silk has faded, but the humanity remains, passed through time like a quiet breath in the night. Asterisk.